MTT3 is all about ties. Now, we've come across ties before. Let's have a read of this. Sometimes composers want musicians to play notes that are not of a standard length. To do this, they tie same pitch notes together. That's notes of the same pitch. They're on the same line or space. They tie them together to make longer notes. Here is an F that lasts for 8 crotchet beats. Notice that the note is tied across the bar line. So we've got a semibreve, which is really, in standard music notation, is the longest note you tend to get. And then they've tied it to the next semibreve. So we've got 4 plus 4. So that lasts, you actually hold that note for 8 beats in total, and you get 8 crotchet beats, okay? It says ties are usually used only where it is not possible to use a standard note. Okay, so in this case, we've got a correct notation here. We're in 3/4, we've got a minim, which is 2, plus a crotchet, which is 1, and that makes up that. Now, another way of writing this, which it would sound exactly the same, is we could replace this minim for 2 crotchets tied together, and that would sound exactly the same. It's just a bit of an odd way to do it, and it makes it more complicated than it has to be. So we try in notation to make it as easy for the performer to read as possible. So that's why although it's not wrong, really, it will sound the same. We say it's wrong because it's more complicated. So let's keep it simple. So that is the correct way to write it. And the same here. Semibreve is much simpler, you can see, than this, which is a dotted minim, which is worth 3, tied together to a crotchet, which is still worth 4 beats. So it's the same, but it's much more complicated. Okay, so we want to write it like this. If a tied note has an accidental before it, that accidental applies to all the notes that are tied together, even if they're tied across a bar line. For example, this tied F sharp lasts for 4 crotchet beats. So we know from our work with sharps and flats and accidentals that when you have an accidental in a bar, that only applies to notes within that bar. And once you've got a bar line, the new bar, normally this F would be not a normal F natural, not an F sharp. But because it's tied together, the accidental applies to that one as well. Okay, right, so let's get on with it. Add the total number of crotchet beats in these tied notes. So we need to just look at what notes are tied together and add up. So a dotted minim, remember a dot adds half of the note value again. So a minim is worth 2 plus half of 2 is 1, so that's 3. And then we add on, because it's tied, add on the 2 of that minim. So that's going to equal 5 crotchet beats. Okay, and that's it for that. And we've got the same thing. Oh no, that's last week's MTT. Let's have a look. We've got the same things here, tying together all these notes. You just hold that for that length. So that's going to be 4 plus 4 plus 3. And you write that out and the total. Okay, question 2. The following tied notes are unnecessary. Write the music correctly. So you can see here they've tied a crotchet with a quaver. That wasn't necessary. We know normally you should write that in the simplest way possible would be with a dotted crotchet and then a quaver here. Okay, so we want to do similar things. So to copy this out again, we want to remember everything up there. So let's copy out the clef first, the treble clef. It's good to practice those. Then the 4/4 time signature, and then we can start on this. So instead of a crotchet tied to a quaver, what do we want? Well, that equals a dotted crotchet. So we can draw that as a dot, and then we've got our quaver on its own now. Good to line it all up like this. And then we've got the same thing again. We've got a crotchet tied to a quaver, which will just end up being a dotted crotchet, and then that. And try and line up your notes that you're drawing. Okay, so all of this is the same, so just replace this with a simpler version. Okay, and we've got one more page here. So question 3, look at the following music and add ties where possible. So what does it mean by where possible? Well, we know that you can only add a tie to 2 notes of the same pitch. So let's have a look where it's possible. They've done this one for you, and then these are different pitch. These are the same, so we can tie that. And you always put the tie, it's above if the stems are coming down, and if the stem, or one of the stems is going up, then it goes under like that. And then those are different. That's different. Oh, I've missed one here, look. So this is still the same piece of music. So this C here, going to this C, we can tie, what we do is tie to kind of a random point there and then bring it in from there. So that's going across those 2 lines. So that's tied to that now. And then we've got these 2 which are tied, and then you can carry on. All right. So, last question. I'll just read this first. There is no need to tie rests together. The silence just continues. So you don't tie rests. So add the total number of crotchet beats of silence in these rests. So how many is this? This is just remembering a bit of revision on rests. How many is that worth? Well, that is a semi-breve rest. So we might say it's 4, but we need to look at the time signature because we know that that's also a whole bars rest, regardless of what the time signature is. So that is 3/4, so that counts for 3 beats. Then we've got another 1 and another 1 there. These are crotchet rests, so that equals 5 crotchet beats. Okay, and you can do the same here. So we've got semi-breve rests, or are they whole bars rests? Well, we can look. They're 2/4, so they're only worth 2 each. Okay, right, you can finish that, and that is the end of MTT3.